So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then you can understand the time of the end, per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find in a layer over there regarding with the time of the restoration, and also then Mitchiyahu, the first recorder of the spring feast, related with the 24th chapter of the time of reduction. Let's then evaluate the understanding of the scripture at the moment, because we must delineate what is true and what is false. So let's then start with a spirit other than the spirit taught by the set apart during the time of the transition of the first to the second tabernacle services. Let's then make a parameter of understanding the scripture per the description of Shaliach Shaul. It's extremely important defining what is true and what is not true. So then, Shaliach Shaul was sent into the Gentile world. He was not sent to the Gentiles. He was sent into the Gentile world. This means when the Messiah was in a holy city at the time, not holy whatsoever, then those people who were decent during the time of the Messiah's completion of the spring feast, those people were outside of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was extremely contaminated with politics and religion. Not tabernacling, but religion. So the Messiah then, he completed his spring feast, and Ruach HaKodesh had come. Then Shaliach Shaul was sent into the Gentile world. So let's understand the translation and the mistake done by the Greco and the Romans when they began to translate the instructions. Shaliach Shaul and Barnabas were never sent to the Gentiles. They were sent into the Gentile world, because the set apart only were then waiting for the completion of the half of the oracles. It makes no sense Shaliach Shaul being sent into the Gentiles if they were not guardians of the oracles. They would have to be taught from A to Z of the holy instructions, and then afterwards learning the holy language, and then being ready for the invitation. It doesn't make sense. So when Shaliach Shaul said he would no longer be involved with his people, then he would turn to the Gentiles, it's not true. The translation was scandalized. Let's understand why. When Shaliach Shaul was explaining the holy instructions from the viewpoint of the completion of the spring feast, a lot of his people, the set apart, they refused to listen to what the Messiah said. This provoked a great contradiction of the laws of Moses and those who were being enlightened by the completion of the spring feast. As Shaliach Shaul was explaining the completion of the spring feast, more and more and more of the set apart, there were religious, became resistant to what Shaliach Shaul was saying. So what Shaliach Shaul said was, he was in search for those set apart in a Gentile world, far away from the religion. Never straight to the Gentiles, because the Gentiles don't know what to do with the instructions. They were never taught. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever when you read from the regular scripture, because Shaliach Shaul and Barnabas, they were sent to the Gentiles. No, they were sent into the Gentile world to enlighten those set apart regarding the completion of the spring feast and then the dispensation of Ruach HaKodesh and the 7 spirits of Elohim, 7 functions. So then, we find in many countries around the world a condescending spirit. So let's understand then where many nations would be categorized as condescending. Let's read then what Shaliach Shaul said to Timothy. There are a couple of understandings of Timothy, first and second. Shaliach Shaul had the desire of having then a person prepared and taught and trained to take on his place. Because he knew Timothy was very involved with prayers of the set apart. From his mother, grandmother, and the elders of the set apart had a word for him. Shaliach Shaul then began his reliance upon his protege, or then Timothy. But Timothy was a soft mouth when it came to the holy instructions. It's very evident. Every time then he would confront the leaders of the law, Timothy would not have the courage to confront them related with the completion of the spring feast. So from the standards of what it takes to get on with the instructions, Timothy was a soft mouth. So then, Shaliach Shaul was explaining, giving extras directly to Timothy, why then those religious leaders were so resistant. So then, 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, states then in the 7th verse, but then reading from the 1st, but know this, that later days would come and would be a whole lot more resistant towards what then the Messiah has taught. And then men, or then the male that should be teaching the holy instructions, would become lovers, or then they would get away from the holy instructions and the path previously set, and they would then turn to themselves, and they would want money, they would boast of themselves, they would be proud, revilers, unyielding towards their own people, deniers of instructions, and then they would be twisted. They would be malicious, would be ferocious, because they want to defend what they want and their pleasures. When people are denied of their pleasures, people become ferocious. Haters, treacherous, harsh, inflated, more towards pleasure than the instructions, or encouraging the brethren or the set apart maintain themselves loyal to the instructions. Having a form of respect for Elohim, but wide or away from the power of Elohim. It's a form of respect, but then far away from Him. So then, from such, remain yourself away from these people. For of them, they are then those who goes into then houses to captivate then the focus of women who are plunged in sins and led away by diverse lusts, who are always learning and can ever, whatsoever, never come to the knowledge of the truth. So let's try to understand this section and then relate it with, let's say for instance, our own country. Why there are so many denominations, so many pastors, teachers, evangelists of their very own, and why they are always trying to get ahead of somebody else with a condescending spirit, always criticizing, but then not able to understand the truth. So not understanding the instructions is very dangerous, because people, when they hear the truth, if they are not grounded in the holy instructions, they become thieves unknowingly, and they steal the knowledge of others because of their condescending spirit. Condescending means the other person speaking the truth is always lower than the person hearing. That's why our nation always trying to learn but never able to teach the truth. Because when they hear the truth, they consider themselves always higher than the people talking. This means a condescending spirit, not coming from the Messiah, because Shaliach Shaul said in 2 Corinthians 11:4, if any person comes to you and shows you, proclaims to you, speaks with you regarding another Messiah other than taught regarding tabernacling, then you have the false Messiah, the false spirit, because always trying to condescend others while never able to understand the holy instructions. So then they become thieves. They don't understand what goes on, but they want to be on top, but when they speak, they are stupid. So then let's understand why there are so many denominations in our country and our economy is nearly ruined. Precisely because of this condescending spirit. Rather than listening, then they want to overpower other people, because they consider themselves higher than the others. And by doing this, they become lower than the others. That's why then Shaliach Shaul, when he was speaking with Timothy, the first topic he was explaining is, these people are then consumed by their own pleasures. You can be consumed by religion if you understand the scripture on your own terms. It's a form of scandalized pleasure disguised as truth of your own. So condescending spirit. Then Shaliach Shaul also said, regarding the times and the seasons, he would not have to teach the people during his time when he wrote those extras related with tabernacling. As far as the times and the seasons, then he would not have to explain them, because they were set apart in the town where he was speaking, because they were acquainted. He was sent to those set apart into the Gentile world. That's why he said concerning times and seasons he would not have to explain it. If Shaliach Shaul was explaining to the Gentiles, then he would have to explain the times and the seasons. So logic, as far as times and the seasons, they would not have to be explained, because he was speaking with the set apart far away from Jerusalem. But then when the people hear the truth so simply, then comes the condescending spirit. Because it's so simple, then they kind of get themselves in a stir And they consider themselves instantly higher than the others, without understanding what it means. Because if you place the holy instructions in front of the person and say, then teach, a person is not able. That's why then Shaliach Shaul said, who are always learning and can never come to the knowledge of the truth. They hear the truth, but they don't practice the truth. So then, after this basic introduction as far as we understand of tabernacling, during the time of a transition, we are not even speaking of the relationship of the holy cities and Gentiles. We are speaking the basics of what Shaliach Shaul was then delegating to his set apart outside of Jerusalem. And when people get excited and they try to do more than they should have, instantly they become condescending. It's amazing the amount of evil in people, and they're not even aware of it. It comes out as natural. They think they are the people speaking when there is evil in them speaking on their behalf, and they are in line with evil so much for so many years, blended, and they don't know how to separate. They think they are talking when there is evil in them in line with themselves, but they talk anyway. So condescending spirit. Let's understand tabernacling then. As far as the economy, we truly must understand during this time of restoration, must never be any layer new. There isn't. The layers of understanding were already set aside and placed completed as far as recording is concerned a long time ago. People are discovering the layers of the instructions, but those are not new. So let's not get wild up because, they have discovered then the layers of understanding of the whole instructions per the Aramaic, and people get so... It's not new. It can't be new, otherwise it's not restoration. Then the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries would be then restored. What kind of cities were those? The cities of the Messiah. From the time of Yahan until 1009, the cities of the Messiah. These situations were already known. So then, since the main focus is then tabernacling, there are a couple of simultaneous understanding. Tabernacling and then the layer of the Gentiles. Those can't be mixed. Because the Messiah is tabernacling himself when he went to Mount Gerizim. He spent a couple of days with the Samaritans, indicating 2,000 years, 2 Yom creation days. 5032. He was born in 4999. We are during the time a bit over the 7,000th year. So after instructing then the Samaritans, he went back to Jerusalem and he was destroyed. Then he came back. Then he gave further instructions, and he said, go therefore around the world and tabernacling. Then he ascended. So then, the first understanding is the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. 61st chapter of Yeshayahu. But the Gentiles were included in the plan, not as set apart, but as Gentiles. Even the Gentiles or the heathen would understand the mighty works of the Creator, and then they would work their fields. Gentiles were included. Let's make sure then people don't get condescending, because a lot of people, they hear but they don't practice, because they want to justify the lack of practice in their life as part of their own sinful nature. Because they don't confront themselves as sinful and then push for the holy cities, they instantly become condescending, always learning but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. You know what this means? Becoming a person as the Messiah was, a galad person or revealed person, not tabernacling. Tabernacling was only the Messiah, and he belongs to the Holy of Holies, and the rest of us should be linked with him. There is no walking tabernacling anymore. There is Ruach HaKodesh in the world always guiding, but then the holy cities must return.